President Trump continues to downplay the significance of his top administration officials inadvertently sharing military plans with journalist Jeffrey Goldberg on the Signal app. The president claimed multiple times yesterday that no classified information was shared and defended National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Meanwhile, the Senate Intelligence Committee held a hearing on worldwide threats yesterday with multiple Trump administration officials testifying. National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and FBI Director Kash Patel all spoke before the committee. With the hearing quickly turning to Gabbard and Ratcliffe's involvement in the Signal group chat, here's how our next guest, Democratic Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, questioned the pair.
The deliberation as to whether or not we should launch a strike on another country, would you consider that classified information, Ms. Gabbard?
Well, the information was not classified.
I'm not talking about this. I'm just talking about deliberation from principals as to whether or not we should launch a strike on another country. Would you consider that classified information? I'm not talking about what happened this week.
There are other factors that would go into determining that classification.
Mr. Ratcliffe? The deliberation between principals in our national security apparatus about whether or not to strike another country, would you consider that to be classified information?
Pre-decisional strike deliberation should be conducted through classified channels.
And Senator Kelly joins us now. He's a member of the Intelligence and Armed Services Committees. He's a retired Navy fighter pilot. Thank you very much for coming on the show today, sir. Did the answers you got yesterday in that hearing, were any of them sufficient?
There was so much that was left out that they were not clear about, that they tried to avoid. Earlier in that conversation, I specifically asked them about, was there any information about targets? Was there any information about weapons or weapons systems in that signal chain? And they said, well, initially not specific, and just trying to get around answering the question. Mika, I think what's important here is that we had folks at the highest level using an unsecured commercial application to do things that should be done on secured systems, and it put people at risk. There were pilots launching off an aircraft carrier in the Red Sea, going into harm's way, and that information about their strike could have been shared inadvertently or hacked by the Russians or by the Iranians. And that information could have been shared with the Houthis. And then those pilots are put at additional risk. This is the kind of stuff that should be classified at the highest level. Pre-decisional information about strikes and operational plans. And I think there's a lot more we need to see here. We need to see the rest of this text chain. It's very important to me on the Intelligence Committee and the Armed Services Committee to see this.
You know, and the thing that we haven't really said is they're damn lucky that it was Jeffrey Goldberg that got this. Somebody who was responsible, somebody who's still holding back and not revealing the classified information. Senator,
Joe, also,
yes,
I think you're making a really important point. There's a lot of other random people that could have just screenshotted it, and exactly at the wrong time, before the forces in the Red Sea could be notified, that they put it on the internet, and now folks know, and those airplanes can't be turned back, or they've already launched. They're over, their feet dry over Yemen, and you have a pilot that gets shot down. That's how this could have played out.
Well, I mean, and the question that's begged to be asked right now is, this is the one we know about.
Exactly.
How many of them do we not know about?
No.
I asked that question.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it was in the open hearing, but I asked if there were other signal chains with other principals. And the answer is yes, there is. I also asked about, have you gone through and checked to make sure there's no other random people in there? One of the witnesses says they did, the other didn't. So there's a possibility that there, on other signal chains, that there are other random people that were included.
Yeah. Senator, one quick question, and then I'll pass along. A lot of people with a lot of questions for you. But I got several texts, I'm sure you did too, from loved ones who have children in uniform, or loved ones, spouses in uniform, just absolutely horrified, wanting assurance that their children or their loved ones are going to be safe. What do you say to them when there's not only this sort of breach, but also this sort of arrogance where nobody will step up and say, we really screwed up, this will never happen again, our top priority is protecting our men and women in uniform?
Well, I'll say that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle in the United States Senate, on the Intelligence Committee, on the Armed Services Committee, we want to get to the bottom of this, and we want there to be accountability. I think there needs to be. I talked to some of my Republican colleagues on the floor of the Senate last night, and that this was a colossal failure of operational security. And we're only 2 months into this administration. I made it perfectly clear during the confirmation process for the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, that he was fundamentally unqualified for this job. I think as we see the additional information, I do believe we will. I also think it's important that the Atlantic magazine at this point releases the rest of this signal chain. The president said it was unclassified. Tulsi Gabbard and the CIA director Ratcliffe, they said it was unclassified. That information should be released, at a minimum released to us, but even released publicly. But what I would say to those folks is we're going to work to get to the bottom of this. We're going to try to get the administration to make some changes and do a better job. There is nothing more important than protecting our men and women that go into combat.
And Jeffrey Goldberg, by the way, has suggested he may release more of what he saw in that Signal group chat if these officials continue to lie about what was in it and suggest it was not classified. Senator, you talked about some of your Republican colleagues, and we can go back to the first Trump administration. We all know this as people who cover the administration. Republicans saying things privately about President Trump that they would never dare say in public for fear of crossing him. So I guess the question is, under normal circumstances, when you have accountability, integrity, patriotism, there would be consequences for this. In this culture, though, in this administration, do you expect any real accountability for what happened here?
Well, I serve in the Senate seat of John McCain. Here's a guy who would speak truth to power, I think, on a regular basis, and didn't have a problem standing up to this president or any president. I think we need to see more of that. I think my Republican colleagues need to get off the sidelines here. We see that occasionally from some of them. But it does also seem that Donald Trump is the wholesale owner of the Republican Party right now. It's his party. It's got tremendous influence in it. But this administration has been making some bad decisions on a number of fronts. I was just back in Arizona talking to folks about Medicaid cuts, people that are going to lose their health insurance so the administration could give a giant tax cut to billionaires. Folks are really worried out there. They're worried about unprecedented access that Elon Musk has to the Social Security database. There is every week there seems to be another rather disturbing development with this administration. This is just a thing for this week. I do think, Willie, that we are closer on this signal issue. I think we're closer to the beginning of this than we are to the end. But ultimately, when this is resolved, there needs to be some accountability.
Democratic member of the Intelligence and Armed Services Committee, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, thank you very much. And